storm before the season. Some seasons are about statistics, others about banners. But this was about survival. About a team no one believed in, dragged into an 82-game war with nothing but grit and the ghosts of their past. In the heart of a rusted-out city, the kind of place sports documentaries skip over, the hardwood floor inside Holloway Arena echoed with something desperate. The city had lost its industry, its hope, and nearly its identity. All it had left was a basketball team nobody cared to remember, the Holloway Hounds. Coach Elijah Daniels stood alone under the flickering lights of the practice gym. His grizzled face told stories he never had to. Fired twice in 5 years. Laughed out of the league. Now, at 58, this was his last shot. Not just at coaching, but at redemption. He glanced over at Marcus Green, a 24-year-old point guard with shoulders heavier than any stat sheet could hold. Marcus moved like a leader but lived like a man haunted. His older brother had been gunned down 2 years ago, just blocks from this arena. Since then, Marcus played every game like it was a fight because for him it was, "Head up," Daniels called. "You run this squad now, so run it like it means something." Then there was Reggie Barnes, 15 years in the league, body wrapped in tape, knees creaking like old wood. A center who couldn't jump anymore but could still stand tall. He was the locker room's quiet spine. A man who once dunked over legends but now dunked in silence, just to prove he still could. And finally, Luis Ortega, barely 19, plucked from a remote village league in Argentina. He didn't speak much, but the fire in his eyes said everything. He ran the floor like his shoes were on fire. Wild, fast, unpredictable. He missed layups, hit impossible threes, and looked terrified every time the crowd got loud. But he cared. And Daniels saw in him what no scout did, a raw soul hungry for more than survival. This wasn't a super team. This wasn't a contender. It was a patchwork roster of bruised veterans, overlooked rookies, and a coach with a clock ticking in his chest. The preseason was a disaster. Blowout losses. National analysts joked they'd be lucky to win 20 games. One called them an organized funeral procession. But in the locker room, Coach Daniels wasn't laughing. "They think this is a game," he said, pacing in front of his team. "But we're not here to entertain. We're here to fight. And we're going to war for every possession. For each other. For this city." Marcus nodded. Reggie cracked his knuckles. Luis whispered a word in Spanish none of them understood. But they felt it. Outside, the rain hit the arena like war drums. Inside, a forgotten team prepared for battle. Blood, sweat, and losing streaks. The season began not with a bang, but with a slow unraveling. 10 games in, the Holloway Hounds had 1 lonely win and 9 bruising losses. Each defeat was more painful than the last. Not because of the scoreboards, but because of what they revealed. Missed rotations. Silent benches. Fractured trust. The locker room grew colder with every game. Marcus Green sat alone after a blowout loss to Denver, his jersey soaked, hands clenched into fists. The crowd had booed their own team that night. A child in the front row had worn a sign, "Trade us all." But Marcus wasn't angry at the fans. He was angry at himself, for the turnovers, for the missed free throws, for not being the man his brother would have been proud of. Reggie Barnes winced as he peeled off his compression sleeve. His knees, swollen and stubborn, pulsed with a familiar ache. The team doctor warned him last week. Another hard fall, and he might not walk without a limp. Reggie didn't tell anyone. He didn't need sympathy. Just one more run. Luis Ortega struggled silently. Plays broke down because he couldn't understand Coach Daniels' shouted instructions. He fumbled passes, second-guessed cuts. After one brutal home loss, he stayed behind in the darkened gym, shooting alone until midnight. The next morning, no one asked why his eyes were red. Coach Daniels watched it all from the sideline, his faith tested with every timeout. He refused to trade players, refused to change the system. "It's not about tactics," he told his assistant. "It's about trust. And that's earned in the dirt." The tension peaked after a lifeless loss in Toronto. In the locker room, shouting erupted. "You don't pass." Marcus barked at Luis. "You don't lead." Luis snapped back in broken English. Reggie stood and slammed a water bottle into the wall. The room fell silent. "None of this matters," he growled. "Not the stats. Not the drama. What matters is whether we bleed together or die apart." No one spoke. Not even Daniels. That night, Marcus drove past the empty streets of Holloway to the small cemetery near 39th Avenue. He knelt beside his brother's grave, head bowed, hands trembling. "I'm tired of losing," he whispered, "but I'm more tired of letting you down." The next day, before tip-off, Marcus placed his jersey on the seat beside Reggie's locker. Reggie didn't ask. He just nodded once. Respect exchanged in silence. That night, against a top-seeded team, the Hounds clawed their way to a 1-point win. Marcus hit the go-ahead shot. Luis got the game-saving steal. Reggie blocked a dunk that shook the rim and his knees. As the buzzer sounded, the arena roared for the first time in weeks. It wasn't just a win. It was a crack in the concrete. Something was shifting beneath the pain. Brotherhood in the fire. The win wasn't a miracle, it was a spark. And in the cold grind of the NBA season, even a spark can light a fire. Something shifted after that night. The team no longer looked away when mistakes were made. They held each other accountable. They spoke less but trusted more. The silence between them began to carry weight, not distance. Coach Daniels adjusted. Less yelling, more listening. He began morning shoot-arounds with a question instead of a clipboard. "What are you willing to give today?" The answers varied, but they always ended with everything. Marcus Green became the heartbeat. His once fiery rage hardened into leadership. He started texting Luis nightly, short messages, simple plays broken down into emojis and video clips. Luis, eager to grow, responded in English more confidently each time. By December, the Hounds weren't just surviving, they were fighting back. A 3-game win streak turned into 6. A home blowout win over the defending champs got them national attention. Analysts who once mocked them now called them the toughest team no one wants to face. Reggie Barnes, though slower than ever, anchored the defense like a man possessed. He couldn't jump, but he didn't need to. He read offenses like scripture. Opponents who underestimated him quickly learned that wisdom was a weapon, and Reggie wielded it like a blade. One frigid night in Milwaukee, Luis dropped 30 points with 5 three-pointers. As reporters crowded around him post-game, he clutched the mic nervously and said, "I do this for my mama. She's watching from hospital. I love you, mama." His accent was thick, but the message cut clean. The locker room was no longer fractured, it was forged. Players shared meals, told stories, and bled for one another on the court. Reggie began teaching Luis how to play chess on flights. Marcus gifted Reggie a vintage jersey signed by his college coach. Coach Daniels laughed for the first time in months. Yet beneath the brotherhood lay pressure. With 10 games left, they were in a fierce battle for the 8th seed. Every possession mattered. Every turnover felt fatal. But instead of folding, they leaned in. Pain had taught them how to endure. Trust had taught them how to move forward. In one game against New Orleans, they came back from 18 down in the 4th. Luis hit a corner 3 to tie it. Reggie took a brutal charge that left him breathless. Marcus iced it at the line. As the final buzzer sounded, the crowd chanted in unison, "Hounds! Hounds! Hounds!" They weren't just winning, they were becoming. In the locker room, no one celebrated wildly. They sat together in exhaustion, sweat dripping, hearts pounding. Coach Daniels stood in the center. "For games left," he said. "One shot at the playoffs. Nothing's promised. But I know one thing." He paused. "You're not the same team that started this war." And they weren't. They were brothers now. Game 82, the war that defined them. It all came down to one night. Game 82. Win, and maybe, just maybe, the Holloway Hounds could sneak into the playoffs. Lose, and the season's war would end in silence. The arena pulsed with tension. Fans packed every seat, their cheers thick with hope and fear. The opponent, a powerhouse team, deep, polished, and ruthless. The kind of team that crushed dreams without blinking. In the tunnel, the Hounds stood shoulder to shoulder. Marcus Green looked over at Reggie Barnes, who was strapping his knee for what could be the last time. Luis Ortega tightened his laces, lips moving in silent prayer. Coach Daniels walked down the line, tapping each player's shoulder.